We're back for another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg, once again, talking too much like I always do, but that's why I started the podcast. So this week for episode 87 of the Capes and Tights podcast, we have Travis Gibb, writer extraordinaire of comic books like Coins of Judas over at Band of Bards, Granite State Punk at Scout Comics, and Holiday Spirits, a Kickstarter campaign that I was lucky enough to back not too long ago. Here's a copy if you're watching of Holiday Spirits. But we chatted comic books. We chatted his kind of comic book origin story. We chatted New England, New Hampshire, because he's from Rochester and I'm from Maine. And we talked a bunch of more stuff on here. So check this episode out. But before you do, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, Capes and Tights. Find us on there, Apple and Spotify and all your major podcasting platforms. Subscribe, rate, review, 5 stars, please. That'd be amazing. As always, capesandtights.com has a wide variety of things you can look at on there. But this episode 87, is Travis Gibb, comic book writer. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome, Travis. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm great. It's such an awkward thing to be like, how are you? Even though we've been talking for 5 minutes before pressing record. It's always the weirdest thing.
Because it's also weird to do this at 9 a.m. Like, yes. I don't do a lot of morning interviews, so I'm very confused. I'm not sure, like, where my energy level is going to be at. So it's a weird.
I should have texted you and been like, hey, you should just stay up all night. So this is a really late night.
Just get yourself in delirious state like you normally are when you do interviews at 10 p.m.
Well, I used to do it a lot at the time, and then I I do 2 or 3 a day now. Like I just like put them all into days, and so I schedule them out like 3 or 4 hours apart and stuff like that. So there are people, and usually the West Coast people end up getting those later on in the days for me things, because obviously to them it's whatever. But I had someone who I had set up a interview, and I was like, oh, there's another person from this project that also could join us, so let me just contact them and see if they want to join. But the time slot had already been like scheduled. And they were an East Coast person. And so this other person was West Coast. And it was like, I think we were recording at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And this person's like, yeah, no big deal. I'll get up. It might be a little groggy, but I'm like, 9 o'clock in the morning is one thing. But like you getting me up and ready and starting to record at 7 o'clock in the morning, you can screw. Like, I'm sorry. That's early. 9 o'clock, okay. But
didn't you just do Rich Dueck and Alex Kermack? So they're both East Coast. I'm sorry. I was thinking John Lee's for a minute. I was like, because John Lee's is England. And whenever I hear Alex Cormack, I'm like, John Lee's.
I've talked to people from like, there was one person I wanted to talk to from Australia. And I was like, that's just not going to work, because no matter what time works for them, it's likely not going to work for me. And so like, I just don't think this is going to work. When you come stateside, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. But like Australia was a little bit too much of a time change for me.
Oh, I think you could do it. David, I talked to David Azan, and he's up a lot of times at like 9, from like 9 to 10. Okay. That's like his.
So that would be 9. Was that right around 9 to 10 for New England, or what's the time change for Australia?
I have no idea what time it is.
A long time.
When I see him on the internet, it's between between like 8 and 10 p.m.
When you're talking at that point, you're talking to someone in the future, right? Because they're like an entire day ahead of time.
He can tell me all the amazing things that's going to happen to me for the day.
It's going to be shitty. That's what it's going to be. No,
it's going to be shitty. Man, how hardcore is Australians, man? Like their whole place fell on fire. They had like the worst pandemic shutdown. Kangaroos attacked them on the regular because they all had to come into the city. Like it is wild to live in Australia.
You're right, and it takes a tough person. No, I moved to Australia. I don't like that. Those things maybe not, but like it's one of those like weird places. Like where would you move in the world? And I'm like New Zealand or Australia. That could do that because it's like close enough to the United States. That's like, but like not. And also, it's different. But I'm also like we had talked before we press record. You're from New Hampshire. I live in Maine. I'm from New England. You're now in Florida, but like. Maine and New England and stuff like that, there's like no poisonous snakes. There's no real like tornadoes or like hurricanes don't really hit us that bad. We get cold winters that we can deal with. But like other than that, like my son who's 2 years old can pretty much just play in the yard. Okay, he worries about ticks. But if that's what if that we're worrying about is ticks, then I think we're okay here in New England. You're right. With forest fires and kangaroos attacking, I'm all set with moving to Australia now that I thought about it.
It is. I mean, ticks are leeches. You got leeches periodically.
the stray, rabid skunk here and there. But yeah, we're good.
Right.
I just finally took these out of the actual packaging because obviously I read them digitally. I love
Nice.
the almost like I don't even know, like satin. I almost
Yeah,
feel like
yeah, we do it's called a soft cover,
okay.
and they're very, very cool. It actually was such a blessing. So you're looking at Holiday Spirits,
Yes.
and it was all the paper they had because of the paper shortage a
Yeah.
couple years ago. And they're like, "Hey, we have this. You like it?" And I was like, "Do I like it?
Yeah.
This is better. Can we do all my books this way?" Like, what are you talking
Can
about?
you do single issues like this too, please? But yeah, no, I had opened it out of the bag and board. That actually, I think that should have been a premium upgrade right there, right? Get a bag and board with it. The way the bags and boards were
Right.
hard to get for a while there too. Just be like, okay, for the next level on your Kickstarter, you get it bagged and
Right. And
boarded.
putting them in, like putting a trade into a bag and board is effort. Like it is not an
Yes,
easy thing, ladies and
yes,
gentlemen. They're not designed for
no,
that.
and that's funny because like at my buddy's LCS, I have made a deal with him in a sense that I pay for bags and boards, and I bag and board some of his comic. Like his new releases aren't bagged and boarded. Obviously, his
Right.
trades are not all bagged because obviously they're on like a shelf for like trade, so people can like flip through them and stuff like that. But I made a deal with him. If I buy the bags and boards, can I put on the back of the bag and board, like the back of the bag where you basically would tape it shut, a little sticker that says this one of these creators were featured on the podcast, and then it shows
Oh,
an episode
nice.
number and a QR code. And so what I ended up doing for trades is like I do like one of them, so like it's not all of them are like that, but I just put
Yeah.
them in a bag. I put them in a golden age bag and say call it good, no board, no nothing, just so it's
Right.
like something that's I'm not sticking the sticker on the actual trade, that I'm actually like putting it on there. But yeah, I realized that afterwards that bagging and boarding a trade is not, or a graphic
Yes.
novel is not the easiest thing in the world. That and
Scout
a
comp.
Last Ronin comic book.
Yeah. Which I was so it's so crazy that I was so disappointed when Last Ronin came out and it was the bigger size because I wanted it regular. And then when they switched for volume two, I'm mad at them again because they switched from the bigger size.
So I just had a conversation with Kevin Eastman, and I was like, I don't
Okay.
want to ask him this question, but I'm gonna ask him this question towards the end if I have time. Why?
Right.
And so here's the deal. So TM or the Last Ronin Volume 1, the 5-issue miniseries that came out, is that oversized print because of the old Mirage days when it first came out. It was
Yeah,
like
Matt
oversized.
magazine
Yeah,
print.
yeah.
Right.
Then this is technically not a second volume. This is a IDW has needed something to hold them off until volume 2. And
Right.
so they did this Lost Years book, and that's they wanted to make it regular comic book size and so on and so forth. So when actual Last Ronin Volume 2 comes out, it's going to be in that oversized thing. And I'm like, that almost pissed me off more because like
Right.
pick a road. Like, okay, I understand the whole thing, but now we're going to have to go back to these things. And then I thought to myself, why is IDW not partnering with like and making Last Ronin size bags and boards? Like
Right.
this would be an opportunity for you to like make a bunch of money because most of us only have 5 or 6. I mean, I have like 50 copies of the Last Ronin, but most people only have 5 or 6 copies of it, and they'd have to buy 100 bags and boards. And
Right.
so you'd sell a bunch of stuff, and then they'd only need 5. Like I don't understand why we've been doing this for 3 years now. Why there isn't a Last Ronin size bag and board that has come out that IDW could put their name on. It could be
Right.
all over the place on IDW, but
And we can use it for our Bat Dick book too, which
mm-hmm.
is great.
But it's just kind of funny. Like so I found that out. I was like, okay, now you're like almost pissing me off even more, the fact that you're going back to that size, but it is what it is. And
It's almost saying that this isn't important.
Yeah.
Right. It's saying like, you don't really need to read this.
No, but I was like laughing too. I'm like, wait, this is what we want. I'm like, wait, you're creating it for yourself because you're the creator of the book, but really you're creating it for us as the reader. So like, what do we want? And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, as much as I hated the Last Ronin being that size after 5 issues, okay, that's the way it's going to be. And then they came out with the Lost Years. I'm like, no, stop. And then they're going back. And that's the whole back and forth thing is just pissing me off. But we're not here to talk about Last Ronin. We're here to talk about Travis and your stuff.
Well,
Travis
first,
Gibb.
I'm always down to talk about Ninja Turtles. So
Yes.
that's incorrect, but
True.
you are right. You are right. We're talking about another book.
So we start off. How did you get into reading and collecting comic books in the first place? Like, what's your kind of origin story on comic books?
So this is going to be crazy because we're going to go back to the Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
So I'm from Rochester, New Hampshire, and you being from New England probably know that the Ninja Turtles were created in Dover, New Hampshire. Dover, New Hampshire is right next door. It's the city right next door to Rochester. So for me growing up, the Ninja Turtles were such a big thing. Local boys doing an indie comic, that's really crazy. So I always loved them, you know, and I'm at the age, I'm in my 40s, so like Ninja Turtles were on TV. It was the thing. And then my grandmother got me back in the day, your school would like do these magazine like things, and she got me Spider-Man. So I got, you know, Amazing Spider-Man. I started with the Sabretooth Spider-Man issue. I can't think of the name of it right now, the number off the top of my head. I don't know why, I normally know it. But it was a Sabretooth Spider-Man issue, and then started to go into the black costume. Like, it was really, really cool stuff. So I just really got all hooked. And then when the X-Men cartoon went on, it was game over, man. Like, so I was buying as much X-Men, I was buying as much Spawn, you know, going into the 90s for Image and Spawn and Image, you know. So for me, like, comics have always been part of my life. I've been collecting since I was 12 years old, never sold, still have all the stuff here. You know, I have a complete run of X-Men since it started from X-Men 1. I have every Amazing Spider-Man since that Sabretooth issue. You know, every appearance of Venom, every appearance of Carnage, blah, blah, blah. Like, I love the comics. I love the industry. And then in like 2003, I went to film school, and in it, like, I realized that it was really hard to produce a film because it cost a lot of money. And I didn't get approved to the same credit cards that Kevin Smith did. So I had to come up with a new plan. And so I started doing little shorts, little comic books here and there, doing stuff. It was mostly stuff. But for me, it was crazy because I created indie comic, and I really thought, and maybe this is young nativity, like, it was just going to blow up, because that's all I've learned in my entire life, right? I went from Ninja Turtles. You just make an indie comic, everyone buys it, you're rich. Image, these guys made indie comics, and then they're rich. Just make it, and even you're in New England, so we even had the Tick. Like, so we even had even further than that to prove, like, if you just make something, doesn't matter the quality, like, you're good.
Yes. It's true. I mean, it's if you make it, they will come. Or isn't it the Field of Dreams whole mentality too? It's like what we've always been ingrained in our head, that you just have to, as long as it comes out on paper like this, then you're going to be fine. And nowadays with webcomics, you probably have that, even like the younger generation even has it hard, even quote unquote easier to think that they're just going to make it. They don't even just get it printed. They're just make it into a PDF, sell it online. But
it's wild.
Yeah, it's very wild at how that works. But now you're sitting here. So I was introduced to you through Orange Cone with Holiday Spirits through some people. You know, obviously I got into volume 2 when you were coming out. Who was it? It might have been Jonathan Hedrick who had shared something, and I was like, oh, this looks badass. Because people who listen to this podcast are, it's like a broken record, but I got into comic. I love Marvel comic books, but then I started reading more horror. And I actually have even had a thought process in my LCS this week. It's like, my pull list might sometime before the end of this year only include independent comic books. There might be a time where there's no Marvel books on that list, even though I used to only get Marvel. And he's like, I'd like to see that day. And then I keep on seeing like the new list come out, and I'm like, well, okay, maybe I'll get that, and maybe add some. Don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. But and then so like seeing this, and it was right around Christmas time, obviously, and seeing Holiday Spirit, but then Coins of Judas, obviously, and then Granite State Punk. And obviously Granite State Punk really pulled me in due to the fact that I'm from New England, and you see Granite State on anything, and that's just like awesome. So let's just do a little bit Coins of Judas, because you have a little bit of news on Coins of Judas, right? I saw a little bit of post the other day, but
so we just finished it on Wednesday. So if you are at your local LCS and you picked it up, that was the second thing. We only did a 2-issue arc. It's a new format we're trying out. Back in the day, they used to do 2-in-1s, like 2-issue arcs. Like it was a thing. In fact, I just bought one yesterday just because, to remind people where is it? It's the JLA Hitman. Like, it was a two-issue series. Like it was a thing that used to be. So I wanted to get back to that format. Also because of the time schedule for me and the artist, like getting it out. So we did the first 2 for Coins of Judas, and now we just announced that Coins of Judas 2 is coming out, called The Gambler. Volume Part 1 is coming out, and it should be out in October, so it'll be in like June's previews.
Yeah. And it's a 2-issue series. Is that the plan on that one too, or is that?
Yeah, we're gonna just keep doing 2 and 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, which is
Spawn on Wine and Violence. That's another one that's just been a 2. Like they just did that 2 in with Michael Del Mundo, and Todd McFarlane did that as well. Speaking of Spawn, when you mentioned earlier, is they're doing that 2 issue kind of thing too. And I think that's great because me personally, I loved Coins of Judas, but like even if I didn't, I feel like as a completionist, I just 2 issues. I can buy 2 issues. That's nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, I can commit to 2 issues. Like that's no problem at all. If you're like, oh, this is gonna be a 30-issue series, and I wasn't a fan of something, or like didn't just grab me, tremendously, then it would have been like, maybe I'll buy the issue 1 and I'll move on. But like having that 2 issues, you're almost guaranteed to sell both to that. I always said it was like a kid's movie. A kid's movie, you always guaranteed to sell at least 2 tickets to per family. Because the kid can't go by itself. It has to be the kid and the parent, and at least one parent. And sometimes it's 2 parents, so you're getting 3. And so I think a horror movie, like you can technically go by yourself. So like it's only 1 ticket. And so 2-issue series like this, you can get, guaranteed, pretty much almost guaranteed someone's going to buy both issues, and that's a pretty cool thing in that sense.
But, well, I think you're right too. We saw that in the orders. So just to give you some the wheat or the wheat, that's not the right term. The dirt. That's what I'm trying to say in comics. So a first issue for an indie comic is going to sell whatever it's going to sell. The next issue 2, is 50% drop in dime, where we only had a 25% drop. So I think you're right. I think a lot of even stores were like, oh, this is really easy. I can sell 2 issues to somebody. I'm not selling them on an ongoing. I'm not doing that. So if we do it as 2-issue arcs, it'll help. It also gets number 1s out there more often, which is great for collectors. Collectors love that. We were super blessed. Key Collector really loved both Coins of Judas and Granite State Punk. So I think that stuff really matters. And I think that I think people love it. And I also think it's better for readers.
Yes. Well, I think it's the trade weight, aspect of a lot of people nowadays. They like a 5-issue series can almost not hurt, because obviously you're going to get someone to buy your book and read it if they read it in a trade. But like by waiting and just waiting for 5 issues to come out, and if those 5 issues came out monthly, that's great. But if like there's a couple of issues that I was like, I have 06 Protocol over here that I read issues 1 and 2, and I was like, what, did this just end or what's going on? And issue 3 was like 6 months later for some weird reason. And then there's like 3, 4, 5, and 6 is like the next few months. And I'm like, if someone was trade waiting for that, they're going to wait a year and a half, 2 years before they can actually finish reading the book. 2 issues over a couple of months. You get your finite story. Obviously you're going into part 1 of the Gambler of Coins of Judas as well. But like you get a beginning and an end that you can actually read a complete story with only 2 issues, which is great. And I'm guessing was it hard to force things into 2 issues, or do you think that because you're going to be able to do more?
It's a learning process. Learning it, as you read Coins of Judas, I assume.
Yes.
There was a lot of shit that happened in 2 issues, so it's wild to do it that way. But I think it's also challenging. It's a new challenge. It's not building a book for the trade, which is something that I have to learn. Because I'm normally building something for a trade. But it's also fun. One of the other reasons why we did it, why we decided to come out 2nd issue, is just response. Coins of Judas sold better than anything else from Band of Bards, which is really good. The fan base was there. Our goal originally was going to just go to Kickstarter after, because I have such a great Kickstarter presence. Go to Kickstarter for the trade, and we were going to do one of those small little hardcovers, but it's so. Then I got one. I got a small 48-page. I think it was like Neil Gaiman's murder mystery, or like How to Pick Up Girls at Parties, something like that. Like, and I just was like, oh, but Neil Gaiman can pull it off because he's Neil Gaiman. I'm not Neil Gaiman. I got to give more weight. I need more issues in here. This isn't gonna work.
It's like I have this like books that I got from my 2-year-old out in the other room. It's like the adaptation, condensed adaptation of the movie Cars. And it's like the actual hardcover of it is thicker than the book inside. Like there's like 6 pages on the inside that are soft pages, and then there's this hardcover on the outside, which could kill someone. Like he shoves it in my face, and I'm like, you're gonna like, I'm not gonna have an eye here pretty soon. But you open it up, you're like, oh my god, this actual hardcover outside of it is thicker than the actual book on the inside.
Right.
But yeah, Neil Gaiman can get away with a lot more than you. I'm sorry to say. You admitted it though. Do you think though it's one of those things that you could take, like say you do 2 or 3 parts of this Coins of Judas that could be eventually in a trade together? Would that like
we're definitely sense? Our plan is to trade it out. We'll trade it at the 4 and put it all together, but it will really read like a 2-part to 2-part. It's not going to read like a traditional trade.
That's cool.
Which is okay. each issue of it is going to deal with a certain coin and dealing with finding that coin and the demon hunting with it. So they all kind of stand alone on their by themselves. First one obviously had a lot of coins, a lot of demons. We're really most going forward will be more ones just to kind of show as we build this universe and this world. Coins of Judas is really kind of my first supernatural / superhero book. It's really Ghost Rider-ish, my love of Midnight Suns and all that stuff from when I was a kid is really played out in that.
And how did you get partnered up with Tyler Carpenter?
So Tyler Carpenter and I have been working together for a little bit.
Okay.
He's a friend of mine, and I've had him in my anthology. I do an anthology called Cthulhu Invades. So I've got Cthulhu Invades Oz and Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. He did a story on that. And then I have a book called Broke Down and Four Dead Bodies, which is like a crime noir book. And he did a backup story on that. And he was just a friend. He was a podcaster who also was an artist and really loved the industry. So I've asked him to do a couple small things. Well, the Coins of Judas, how it came out was really interesting. I had submitted that story, like the opening 8 pages of The Father. I had submitted that as a Wolfenheart story for Mad Cave. Like I'd submitted it for their talent search. It didn't get accepted. And I was like, this story is really good. Let me take out Wolfenheart, add my own character in there, add this storyline. And then I submitted it to Band of Bards anthology called Tales from the Static, which just came out a couple weeks ago. Had Jared Luhan, had a whole bunch of different people on it. And they also said, hey, this is not going to work. But the caveat to that was like, we want to make this a whole series. Is that possible? And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And I had asked Tyler to do the art because Tyler was a friend of mine. Yeah. He'd do the art. He'd do it for free. And we could just get paid on the back end. We didn't have to, invest a whole bunch of stuff in it because we're both kind of doing each other a favor. So he just came on the artist. In fact, manga style is not something I love. Like that's not me at all. Like it's not something I think it really fits for the book. I think we did a great job. And that's why you see the color tones are not manga tones. Mm-hmm. Like I put a dark coloring stone, like a autumnal or like a Stillwater kind of color tone on it to go, it's too manga for me. But then we also have the red and white pages, which are also very manga. So it's kind of give and taking to try to learn this. But I also think it made the book have a unique style.
And that's one of the things I thought about too, between Coins of Judas and Granite State Punk, in the sense that, like, Tyler's art works well for Coins of Judas, and then obviously Patrick's work really well for Granite State Punk. And the fact that there's sometimes people, obviously not calling out anybody, but like there's people who create and they go, oh, this artist is amazing, and they partner with that artist and they do something with it. But sometimes it's just like their writing and the artist just doesn't jive very well together. And you're just like, it doesn't work. And then you read something like these and you realize, like, I obviously didn't know, but like I didn't know Tyler's work that much. And it was like, oh, this definitely works. They worked well together. And the same thing went on with, I think I had a couple of notes in my phone when I was reading Granite State Punk about how much Patrick, is it Burmeyer?
Burmeyer, yeah.
That artwork with Granite State Punk was just so fitting. That story, it's just like punkish and grungy and gritty and dirty and messy. And I was like, that fits. Patrick could not have done Coins of Judas, if that makes any sense. In my opinion, obviously Patrick's artwork is great. That artwork wouldn't have transitioned over, I think, to Coins of Judas, and that's why I think both artists fit both those books that we're talking about right now. In that sense.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. Both of those books, I had the artist in mind beforehand.
Okay.
So most of the time I write the story and then I hire an artist, but both of those, like Patrick Brumeyer was the only guy I wanted for Granite State Punk. I wrote that book when I saw his art style. And then Tyler, we were doing that thing. And then when all right, this is going to be an ongoing series. Okay, how can I play to his strengths? What can I do? That's why we have a character that's very open shirt, mask, big fluffy things, and she's very Irish, with a short, pixie cut, like designing these characters to emphasize for them. And then even the monsters, I made them very basic to like emphasize, because that's something I noticed in manga. Like they do, like the big bad guys are like very prominent and very cool looking, but everything else is kind of basic looking. And it's very frustrating to me, especially as Marvel and DC guy, like, no, everybody's going to look cool and be awesome, but just not the way manga does things,
Nope. It's insane. And I've never really honestly sat down, and I've flipped through manga before and stuff, but I've never actually sat down and read anything, but like my buddy's LCS is like his ever growing and it's expanding.
Right.
It's like I'm getting to the point where I'm like worried. I'm like, yeah, but there was comic books there last week. What the hell's going on here? Now there's manga there. And then that's the thing is I always joke with him because I give him shit because all I buy from his shop is comic books. But he sells, I have a toy here and there, but like he sells toys, lots of Pokemon cards now, lots of manga now. But I'm always like joking. I'm like, doesn't that say the Science Day Galactic Comics and collectibles? Right. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on here. And just joking around with the people in there and giving him shit for, but I'm like, let's be honest, the lights are probably on right now because he's selling Pokemon cards, not because he's selling comp.
Right.
Sadly enough to say right now, but he is doing well, and it's one of those things. But manga is like expanded. I'm like, one of these days I'm just gonna have to pick up a book and read it. And then I listened to what podcast was I listening to? Oh, it was David Harper's Off Panel podcast. He had on someone from Boom, and they were talking about how his kid loves manga. But he's like, but the problem is there's like 27 volumes. Right. Like I can't afford to buy this for my kid. Like, okay, makes sense. It's just the ongoing. Speaking of it, is Granite State going to be an ongoing, or is that a finite series as well right now?
So Granite State Punk is a series of one shots.
Okay.
So I'm writing them as one shots as we go. Reason partly is just financially. Patrick is a very expensive artist. He's worth every penny. But there's it's a series of one shots. So the next one, the first one's coming out for you guys. You can get it on Orange Cone's website if you want to get the Orange Cone version. But the Scout version, the first one comes out in March. It's actually March 29th. It's got moved from the 15th.
Okay.
So it's a couple weeks later. So it's March 29th. But the next one's coming out in October. Okay. So it'll be March and October. So you'll get Granite State Punk, which is the first one, and then Granite State Punk Breaking Edge, which comes out in October.
That's really cool. And it's funny is I was trying to think about like back when I just like was a fringe collector. You go into the LCS or you go into a store and you just buy whatever's there. Like you weren't like pull us. You weren't like looking for the next release. You just looked at the new release shelf and like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's a new Superman book or there's a new X-Men book or whatever. Now that I'm actually like paying attention a lot more to like release dates and talking to people and stuff like that on the podcast, is that I feel like it's one of the few industries that I've seen that like they can just like, oh yeah, by the way, it's coming out 2 weeks later. Don't worry.
Right.
Shit happens. Like you're like, wait, what? That doesn't work that way. Or like it's like pushed off months out in the future, and you're just like, wait, I thought it was coming out in March. So I'm glad you said something because it still says on Previews World March 15th.
Yeah, it just the reason for the delay is I sold 4 variant covers, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So we sold 4 variant store exclusive covers. One of them is going to be April 15th. I'm going to be in New Hampshire. So if anybody's listening in New England area, I'm going to be at Concord, New Hampshire at the Old School Comic Show.
Yes.
They have a 250 VIP thing. And if you buy that VIP, you have a exclusive Granite State Punk cover in that, which is pretty cool. So everybody's going to get it. I'm flying out to sign it with the artist of the cover, which is pretty cool, Kyle Willis. So I'll be there to do it. And I'll also be in New Hampshire for people in New England, because especially people in New England, I'll be at Free Comic Book Day at Jetpack, which I know is a big thing.
Yes.
So I'll be at Jetpack signing as well on Free Comic Day.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. Because I mean, Free Comic Book Day, it's such a cool thing. It's like you have to almost book people to be a guest at a Free Comic Book Day event at a local comic book shop like 6 years in advance, because like I feel like we've tried to get people at the LCS in my town and they're just like, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to be at this place. Oh, I'm going to be at this place. And it's like, we need to find someone who's like lives next door to the LCS, who's a comic book creator, and have them come in, because that's the only way we're going to get someone to come in. Because we've like reached out to a couple of people and they're just like, nope, sorry, I'm busy. And I'm like, okay, well, how about we book for Free Comic Book Day in 2024? Does that work for you?
Right.
Can we do that now and book you now? So they come up. No, Jetpack's great too, so that's pretty cool. And I'm excited. I'm trying to make it to the Old School Comic Show because it's only a few hours away from me. But like I'm so pumped that is even happening now. Like, was it last year they did the first one? Or was it the year before that? And I like that's just like really cool, because I think there's there needs to be more like, I want to do a creators con, where it's like literally the entire thing is just like some vendors to help make some money and have people come in. But like all of the tables are just creators. They create comic books. You create something. It could be a book, a novel, artwork, whatever. You create something, and not, I was in this movie as an extra, which is great. You know, like meeting those people, but like something where these cons have become more about what's on screen and less what's in the pages.
Well, and even like the prints and pins and like, you literally grab Jim Lee's X-Men and like you've made it to shirts, and now you're selling them. You didn't put any effort into it. I'm
Yep.
not trying to say like I appreciate the hustle, like,
Yes.
but you're literally stealing. Like,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
absolutely
Exactly.
stealing.
You're like the person who like sells tumblers, or they just like put a sticker on the outside of it, and it's a picture of a comic. If it's Granite State Punk #1 right there, like, wait a second, I didn't get that money. No. But
So
Grant,
it's super.
I'm excited for those kind of things though, like the old school comic book show and things like that with creators, and the list has always been crazy. I think last year when they did it, it was on the same weekend as the Bangor Comic and Toy Cons weekend of the Wicked, or the other one. No, it would have been the other one, the regular one, which kind of sucked because where I live in Bangor, we lost out on like a whole day of a couple of the creators that were supposed to be at ours because of the same day, and it made more sense for them to go there for that day. So, and it's only one day, right? It's like a Saturday. Is that what it is?
It's just a Saturday. Yeah.
That's even better because like, okay, commit to one day. You know, to buy multi-day tickets. And I don't know. There's something about it. I'm stewing in my brain with my LCS talking about wanting to do something like that too up here, because I think that'd be cool to do, to get something with just.
I'll happily when I'm in the area, like I come up a couple times a year, just because my family still lives up in New Hampshire. I'll happily set up a time to come up to Bangor and do
That'd
a
be
signing
awesome.
for a day.
Yeah, it's really cool. We love. I mean, we've had. I mean, obviously, regular attendees are Schmalky and them come up on a regular basis, and actually the LCS, myself, the Capes and Tights, and my LCS Galactic Comics and Collectibles did a variant cover for Schmalky's 7 Years in Darkness before it went to CEX. So it's his like solo release of it, his first, which is gonna be weird to me. Like, what's the true #1? Is the #1 that Schmalky released, or is it the one that was the CEX? I'm trying to figure out how that works, if that ever becomes a very valuable issue, which is the actual true #1 in the long run. It's gonna be an interesting.
Well, wasn't it an Ashcan? The original one was an Ashcan.
It's a full comic book. The full comic book. It's it's hard to see. I don't know if you can see it, but it's where.
Yeah, I got I have the pink one because Joseph Smokey and them. My book was a Black Caravan book back when Granite State Punk was originally a Black Caravan book.
Yeah, Black Caravan.
Black Caravan, you say?
No, but yeah. So that's interesting, and I'm glad that did it. So what they just do is that when Black Caravan decided it's not going to be a Black Caravan book anymore, it just went over to Scout. Is that what happened?
Correct. Yeah. And I had the choice. I could have pulled it, but you'd already gone through the process. It's already there. I like Scout as a company. I know that there's pros and cons of everything, but it had already gone through the process. I already signed the contract. Why try to set? Because then I could release it later. Like, I don't want that. I want this book. Granite State Punk is the most personal book to me.
I can imagine.
It's super personal. It's my favorite book. I think it's the best thing I've ever written. It is a beautiful masterpiece. Like, and I don't say that about my work very often, but Patrick's work is
weird. Your head was getting so big right now. Right.
It was massive. I don't say that about my work, but what happened is my grandmother passed away, and she left me a decent chunk of change. Because my father had died a couple of years prior, and so she just split up what she would have given my dad to me and my brothers. So I had this money, and it was the first time in my entire comic career that I could be like, you can get whatever artist thing you want. Now, you can't do a full series. You didn't get that much money, but you can do one shot, whatever you want. So I started writing a tale, and the original concept for Granite State Punk was this. It wasn't even called Granite State Punk at the time. It was about this kid who goes home, because I was still dealing with the death of my parents. He goes home and finds out his parents were murderers. And he's having these nightmares at the house, and he goes in the backyard and he digs up all the bones, like in what happens in the issue. But then I set it in New Hampshire to make it a little bit more personal. And then I realized I was mad about the old man in the mountain. And I needed to address it. Because for me, like, living in Florida, I'm like, motherfuckers, put it back up.
Exactly.
Like, no, we've decided. I'm like, no, motherfuckers. I know I don't get a vote or say, I don't live here, but put that shit back up.
Well, it's funny to think about, because I don't know if I was driving behind someone with a New Hampshire plate on it, and I'm like, how much is attached in the state of New Hampshire to the old man in the mountain? And it's like someone who, like, even someone who was born and raised in New Hampshire, they're born this year in New Hampshire, 10, 15 years from now, they're gonna be like, why the hell is this face of the mountain everywhere? Can I go see it? And they're like, no, actually you can't anymore. Sorry. It's just like,
it's wild.
Yeah. It's wild. Yes. So let me, I want to read, I say quick, but Zeke the solicitation for issue on Previews World is Zeke has just gotten released from prison and is now living in the last place he ever wanted to be, his dead parents' house. For years, he tried to drown every ounce of the memories of this place in his messed up childhood. Zeke is now forced to confront it, and the revelation that his past is filled with the occult, punk rock, dark magic, and its connection to New Hampshire's most historic landmark, the Old Man on the Mountain. And like I said, first of all, I think I titled my discussion about this on our website. New Englanders will love this because there's this, like, you not only is talk about New Hampshire in here, but you also travel over to the Salem, Massachusetts, and the connection with witches and things like that. So like that to me was like, okay. And I lived in Massachusetts for 10 years. And so like, and I lived in Salem, New Hampshire for a little bit too. So like there's this, and my aunt and my cousins live in Rochester. So this whole connection to New England, and then me being here, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's a comic book based in New England. I love this thing because I feel like, I don't know why, it's maybe because I live in New England, that I feel like we get a short set of things. We don't actually end up on things in magazines. I think I talked to Daniel Krauss about his comic books, but I also talked about The Living Dead he wrote with George A. Romero. And in there, the first chapter or second chapter, one of the people's parents end up moving to Bangor, Maine. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, I think I was listening to an audiobook and it just came, they said Bangor, Maine on the audiobook. I'm like, what is going on right now? And I just felt like, I don't know why, but like when people pick random places in their books or their novels or their whatever, we don't tend to get Bangor, Maine. It's not like something that people get to pull out or anything in New England. It's usually like Bismarck, Montana or something like that. It's like middle of the country. And so reading a book that has to do with New Hampshire was like, oh yeah. And obviously your connection is the reason why. It's not just you happen to pick New Hampshire. You're obviously from New Hampshire. So
Well, I wanted to write exactly where I was from. So, it's set right in Rochester, New Hampshire, right where I'm from. But I wanted to do urban legends of New Hampshire. So when you get to the second issue, we go to Hampton. Goody Cole was the first witch that was ever put on trial in New Hampshire. So that we handle that in Hampton. I come back to Dover, New Hampshire in issue 3. We spoiler, but we're dealing with there was a big industrial fire that killed a whole bunch of kids and families, and they say that the place is still haunted. So that's kind of the core of it. And in fact, Salem, New Hampshire is actually one of my goals to write a book there and be a welcome to Salem, and then write Mass and then cross it out NH, because I've always remembered when I was a kid, I was like, I've been to Salem, there's no witches there, what are you talking about? It took years for me to be like, oh, that's a different Salem. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I mean, typically you see like there obviously is other places in other states that are named the same city or town name as that, but it's usually not that close to each other.
Right.
Like it's like a maybe 45-minute hour drive. If it's less than that, I don't even know. It's been 10 years. I've been too long since I've driven that drive, but it's close. Right. And yes, if you sit right in the middle, like if I lived in Andover, Lowell, in that area too, like you could potentially be like, which way are you going to Salem? You're like, which Salem are you talking about? This way or this way? Like, because I could go either way right now. But I was trying to explain. My wife has grown up in Maine, her entire life, and when I used to go to in New Hampshire area, I was like, oh, I'll go to Target, and you go, which one? Because in most places, in busier places in the world, there's multiple places you can go. Here, it's like Target, there is only one. It's like Augusta is the next closest Target to us, and that's a couple hours away. And it's like one of those funny things about living in that area. I'm like, which one? The one in Salem or the one in Salem? Because there's one in either place, and there's two Salems. But yeah, the connection is great, and I love that. I love the actual, like, because obviously Salem, Massachusetts has been known in a bunch of movies in history, because obviously the witch trials and stuff like that too. But how connecting that to New Hampshire and the Old Man on the Mountain was a great, story on that sense too. And again, that punk-esque, like if people are into punk, they're gonna also like this book because it has that gritty punkness to it that you don't actually see a lot of times in comic books, which is really cool.
Well, yeah, and I think I didn't realize it at the time, because I was a when growing up, I was not punk. I was not any. I actually wore all black and a trench coat. I was super the Highlander. I basically just didn't want to get laid. That was my plan, actively. But New Hampshire, when I started writing, I just realized how punk rock New Hampshire's mottos are. Right, live free or die. Like no seatbelt. Like no alcohol, except for if you get them from explicit alcohol.
We own the liquor.
Only on the highway. So only drink right off the highway. Like,
No
other than
tax,
that,
no
don't do
income
it.
taxes. Like it's just like this
No income,
freedom.
like this really punk rock
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle. But New Hampshire is anything but punk rock, which is also the other thing that I love about punk rock. Because for me, punk rock is kind of a state of mind. It's more than
Yeah.
just the music. It's a person who's like, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to solve the fucking world's problems. Blah 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 blah. Oh, you going to do any of those things? Oh no, fuck
Oh,
that.
no,
Like I'm
no, no, no. I just know
you'll
how
sit and
to. I'm
talk.
not gonna actually go through with that. I just know how to.
Like I could fix it, you know. And then even like the political parties in New Hampshire, no offense to New Hampshire,
Yeah.
but like Democrats are basically Republicans who like parks. Like
Yes.
they're not the same, right?
Mm-mm.
You go to Mass if you want a real Democrat who's like changing everything. A Democrat in New Hampshire is just like, but we really like parks, and those Republicans don't. Oh,
It is
okay.
so funny
So
because like
base
the border to Massachusetts and New Hampshire is like is there's so many people who shop from Massachusetts in New Hampshire because of the no sales tax and things like that. So
right.
there's like that connection that right over the border of this thing. And you mentioned like the real Democrats in Massachusetts, and then you have your I hate to say fake Democrats in New Hampshire. Obviously states have borders, but like living
Right.
on the border of a state, the states are some not polar opposite, but such different states. In
Right.
that sense, it's pretty funny too. And again, that connection between Salem and Salem, I love the idea of crossing off MA and putting New Hampshire like it's the better Salem.
Yeah, it's wild. You know, and I love the state. I really
Yes.
do, you know. And it took a while, you know. I've been very upfront. My parents were both drug and alcohol, very, very abusive in that aspect. You know, my dad died of an overdose. My mom went into AA, but also still died, even though she was clean, because she didn't take drugs for so long. She had back surgery, took drugs for the pain. She had an aneurysm that popped in her chest and then was draining inside of her, and she didn't know because she had not taken drugs. So like, so it's such a mess, you know. Just a lot of bad things have happened. My best friend was gunned down by the cops, and I got to witch it because he was into drugs. So it's been a while. But I have a 2-year-old, and because I thought I was done. I have a 21-year-old in March, and then I have a 2-year-old.
Ooh.
And I thought I was done. I was like, there's no reason to go back to that state except for my family. And they would far rather come to Florida. So like I can make this
Yes.
work. But then when that happened, my son, I was like, you know, I need to find my love for the state again. Like I need to get over the pain because when your family dies, when your parents die, like it weighs on you. It just does. Like it doesn't seem the same. Like like when you always like, oh, I can go home. My parents will always take me in. Oh no, they're gone. Like that's not going to happen. Now you have to rely on your brother, and you never want to. You know, me being the oldest, I never want to go to my brother's house. That's like no, like I've really messed up if you using the younger brothers.
Yes.
So it's trying to build that and see that and trying to love. And this book has really got my love for the state back. And I've been able to tell, and I'm allowed to rant about the things that I don't like in society and in New Hampshire specifically about like the hypocrisies of it. And it's a lot safer than doing that in Florida because we have a lot of bigger guys in the political spectrum.
Yes. Well, it's also fun that knowing you're from New Hampshire, but also living in another state, writing about New Hampshire. It's very, very, very easy, and you see it a lot where someone writes about the place they're in, living in that place. So, like, if you still lived full time in Rochester, New Hampshire, it's just like, okay, well, he's just writing about what's around him. Okay, I can understand that, but like living in another state right now, even though you're from this area, the idea of like basing it in that area and not in Florida, you know, because obviously it would make a lot more sense that way to do that. But yeah, it's one of those things that when I've had some notes down about writing a comic book, and like the idea that I would want to base it in Maine, but only because the fact that very rarely do things happen in Maine in comic books, and that's the reason why I want to do it, not because I'm from here, but like the idea that like I want someone else from Maine to read something that's based in Maine. And it's always pissed me off when Stephen King's adaptations of his movies or his books come into movies and they don't film a freaking thing in Maine. You're like, that's not Bangor, Maine. I'm sorry, or Derry, Maine. I'm sorry. That's not Maine. That's freaking Vancouver, Canada. Stop this madness. No, and if it ever got picked up and adapted, I'd want this comic book to be based like, we're gonna shoot this in Maine. I don't care about tax breaks. We're shooting this in Maine. But yeah, so that I'm basing it in the place that you're from is a great, almost a crutch for some people, but like it makes sense for you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. But I mean, I think you need to calm down about that filming. It's vacation land. Clearly everyone goes to Maine for vacation. Like everyone.
They go to Bar Harbor. Like, Well, I was trying to figure that out. Like, so my friends at the Bangor Comic and Toy Con and in the main Comic and Toy Con now, they added a convention in Portland, so they're now doing one in April in Portland, and they're doing one in Bangor in October, and so like they're doing the two cons, two different places in the state, which has been pretty cool for them to do. Is I was thinking when I honestly feel like a lot of the guests they were able to book in Bangor to come, whether it be comic creators or movie people or anything, was the fact that they could tack on a couple of days and go to Bar Harbor. Like, it's not that hard to just say, okay, I'm going to add on at the beginning or the ending of my time here. I'm going to add on a day and just go on vacation because I'm already there. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, will they get that same thing with Portland? Like, Portland's just another city, in my opinion. Like, it's not like there's nothing like crazy amazing about Portland for visitors. And so, like, my thought process is they're still going to tack those days on and just drive a couple hours north to go to Bar Harbor, or are they going to go to like Boston? Like, or Salem, New Hampshire, to go see the witch stuff. But though,
wonderful Salem, New Hampshire.
Yes, but like, yeah. But I just thought to myself, I'm like, is a sales tactic to people to come? And I'm like, well, I guess there is a lot of things that cheaper or better direct flights into Portland than there are other places. But yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, that's probably why they got a lot of people to come to Bangor, is because the fact that they can actually see what Maine is known for, which is more the Bar Harbor area, not the Portland, Maine, or the Kittery, Maine. The outlets in Kittery, Maine are pretty cool, though, Oh, it's funny.
So for me, I grew up so Rochester's right on the border of Lebanon, Maine. So my mom lived in Lebanon, and I live in Hampshire. And then we had a camp up in Shapley, Maine, so at Crystal Lake. So there was a lot of stuff. But I used to love going up to comic stores up there. I don't remember. I think it's in Bangor, actually. It's a comic store that was upstairs. It's like a record shop downstairs and like a comic and card game upstairs. I can't remember. It was right across the street from like a theater.
Yeah, there's a place called Top Shelf Comics in downtown Bangor.
Yes.
Yes. And it's changed owners and different things that have happened. He's used to be across the street. Then that building burnt down.
Okay.
Now he's across the street from that. Yeah, he's one of, I think there's now 3 technically. My LCS is in Bangor. It's Galactic Comics. He opened in 3 years ago. And then there's another small one by a movie theater. But now that he's still there. It was him and a guy. So the guy who owns it now does most of the coin stuff. And then his partner was the comic book guy, and the comic book guy kind of like sold his part of the business. And so you go in there now, and you're just like, I want to buy a comic book. And he's like, you sure you don't want to buy coins? so it's a little different.
So what you're saying is Coins of Judas could do really well there.
See, there's that. And so that's funny how you say that, is that I talked to Adam Caesar and David Stoll from Dead Mall over at Dark Horse. And I was like, the 2021 and 2022 Bangor Comic and Toy Cons happened at the Bangor Mall in abandoned stores. Like, they just basically like stores that didn't have businesses in them. And it said, you guys would have killed it. It would have been so meta to have like a table with Dead Mall written on it in a dead mall. It would have been like the perfect thing for you guys. Like, why didn't you come up with this idea 2 years ago and get it published? And he's like, I'm like, well, maybe we'll get it again sometime at a mall. But yeah, no, not the coin store that sells coins of Judas. I could see that.
Yeah, I'm all in.
I mean, it's possible. I don't even know, honestly, if that store still buys many independent comic books anymore. It's a little not to shit on anybody, but Galactic Comics and Collectibles in Bangor, Maine is the place to go to get your indie.
That's the place.
Yes, and he's getting the Granite Steak Punk will be coming in on I guess March 29th now, not March 15th, because 2-week delay. Jeez, no, I'm kidding. I've already read it, so it's not like.
Well, and if you read Scout books, and I'm not trying to be mean to Scout, 2-week delay is actually very nice.
Yes, it is.
Like, they have been struggling to get back since the paper shortage.
Yes, exactly. So
2-week is actually very, very generous for a Scout comic.
What I want, though, is being from New England and having I wasn't really punk-esque, but I went to local shows and like things like that, and I wore black, and I was definitely more in that grungy style. Is that I do know that they're coming out with a legendary size of the Recount from Jonathan Hedrick, and I think a legendary size, Granite State Punk would be pretty badass in the future. So if that does ever get to happen, I don't think you can see it either, but I do have a legendary on the wall, Phantom Star Killer too. But the legendary.
Yeah, they've only done a few. I mean, I think White Ash,
some
of the Black Caravan stuff, and then Recount is probably the only thing outside of that.
Yeah.
I do know that
they're gearing up for Recount Volume 2, so year two or term two, whatever the hell it's called. And so I'm guessing that they're trying to get some publicity in there for that too. So
well, Jonathan lives in my town here.
sorry, I'm kidding.
Yeah, Jonathan Hendrick.
He is the most listened to episodes on our podcast. Okay, this is episode 87, and he has been on here twice, and those still to the time have been the most listened to podcasts out there. And he's also a very good self-promoter, so that's probably why. But like, right. He's very good at talking about himself. I love Jonathan. Jonathan's a great dude.
Yeah,
he's just
great
very
dude.
good at promoting himself. So that's. But yeah, they so you have those two books, Granite State Punk and Coins of Judas. Obviously, I bought, and I mentioned earlier, I was a Kickstarter backer for Holiday Spirits. Is there going to be more Holiday Spirits at some point?
Yeah. We're working on volume 3, and we've got some crazy people in volume 3. That's awesome. On the talent pool, we got Jared Azan. We've got the guy who does Kilchella Mario. I can't think of his last name right now. We've got Swamp Dogs. I don't know if you read that, by GT Holtz. He's going to be in it. Like, we've got some really big names in the 3rd volume. In fact, even Holiday Spirits 1 is going to be in the direct market. I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to do it anyways. In December, Holiday Spirits Volume 1 will be in the direct market through Band of Bards.
Okay, nice.
So
that's awesome.
It'll come out. We'll add a couple of stories to it, so it'll be slightly different than that. But for the most part, it'll be that first volume, which has Jonathan Hendrick in it.
Yes, he's. I like his writing. He's got some cool stuff coming out too, coming up and coming out. And I've read he's got a new book coming out at Scout actually here pretty soon.
Yeah, he's got Quicksand.
Yeah, Quicksand coming out. He gave me an advance on that. I think honestly the email going out might actually have a little blurb from us saying how we like the book and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool.
Nice.
And then you have Holiday Spirits, Granite State Punk is coming out at the end of the month of March. Coins of Judas is available now. You sold out. Did you go into second printing on that?
We're still on the fence of second printing.
Okay.
Because there hasn't been because it's an independent publisher.
Yeah.
Diamond has to request it, and they haven't got the number up of requests. So if you request it through your LCS, that's going to help get that second printing. But you can get it from the website Band of Bards.
Okay, that's cool. So you can do that too. And then obviously, I saw. Did you post another thing about a Kickstarter, super delicious sing along comic book?
Yeah. I mean, I have Kickstarters all this year, but right now we have a kids book out called Super Delicious Sing Along Blog Cottage Cheese, which is a kids book that comes with a song about cottage cheese and about the love of cottage cheese. It was written by my wife, and it was written for my son, who only eats cottage cheese for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's there. But you could also buy all the Orange Cone backlogs. So you could buy Broke Down in 4 Dead Bodies, Voodoo Nations. What else we got? Cthulhu Invades Oz and Wonderland and Expired. Pop Van Winkle. You could buy both of Granite State Punks if you don't want to wait until the time. You can get both Granite State Punk regular and Breaking Edge on that. So
that's awesome. And you obviously are on Twitter at Jesterlou on both Twitter and Instagram. Follow you there.
Yeah.
And
but Substack is
to say, and travisgibb.substack.com. I think that's what it is nowadays.
Yep.
Isn't that what it is?
Yep.
And you can nominate our friend over here for the Ringo Awards too. If you guys want to go on there and do that, I recommend doing that. You can put yourself in for best writer, correct? And as well as obviously Patrick Brumeyer, you can put him in for best artist. Is it Jerome Gagnon, or what is it? Gagnon? How do you say it?
Gagnon. Yeah.
Gagnon. I can't. Who also worked with you on Holiday Spirits. So check that out.
In fact, that's his book. Even though it's my company, that's his book. He came up with that book. That was his concept. I only came up with the spirits part. Okay.
Did he letter the whole thing? Or did
he I don't think all of them in that one, but most of them he did. And then for Cthulhu Invades, he does all of them. He does all my books, all the lettering for all my books.
And I'm adding more. I just had 2 letterers on, so I'm like, maybe I'll talk to other letters in the future. But I feel like at some point you can only letter so many people. Like people will like, I got to listen to an episode with lettering on. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, we had Justin Birch. He's the man.
He's the man. And then also DC Hopkins came on as well. So we got 2 all-star people. And
then
you
should have a lettering roundtable.
There you go. And Micah Myers, I'm trying to get Micah Myers on too, so that'd be a good one too. And obviously Jerome would be great too. But Patrick with best cover as well, best single issue at Granite State Punk, and best anthology with how do you say that? Cthulhu? Did I say that right?
Cthulhu Invades
Wonderland.
Yep.
Yeah. So ringooawards.com. You can enter for the getting on the nominating stuff on that too, because Ringo's are pretty cool. And I filled out a couple of there's some things I'm like, I don't read webcomics, so I'm just gonna skip this. I don't know who to put in for webcomics. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's a great thing and it's up and coming, and people are not up and coming, I should say. It's kind of a stupid thing to say, but like it's growing in the webcomic industry. And so like I thought I should probably read some. I do read a lot of digital on my iPad, so I don't know why I wouldn't read a webcomic. It seems funny not to, because Alex is doing those too, right? Or not Alex, Rich is doing those for Marvel. He's doing those.
Isn't it super wild? Like you and I love comics. It sounds like you've loved comics most of your life. That we can go into a bookstore and there is tons of kids comics that are selling buco bucks, or they wouldn't have like 12 volumes of it, like Dog Man.
Yeah.
And we have no idea who these people are. And then we go to the webtoons and like, this guy is a superstar in webtoons. And I was like, I don't know who you are.
And I have a 2-year-old, so maybe that will be something I will get into, because I want like that kid to like love comic books. So maybe that's the entry to it. And I guess like I do read horror comic books. So I'm definitely not gonna be like, hey, read this. Hey son, read this book about that guy's getting murdered. I'll explain that to you somehow. But yeah, it is kind of funny.
Have you read Audible?
What was that again?
Audible? I think that's how you say it. Okay, so that book's set in New Hampshire, so you should read it. It's Vault. It's a horror book.
Vault's great.
I did not know it was in New Hampshire. It's like issue 3, and they have a sign and like Rochester, New Hampshire this way, Concord this way. I was like, well, you guys are in New Hampshire.
What was it? I was just listening to Mark Bernardin over from, he was on Fat Man Beyond. He's a writer or something like that. And he was talking about how when in the Luke Cage comic books, they drew Harlem and things like that. And they're like, this is obviously drawn by a person who knows Harlem, but has never been there, because it didn't look like this. So at least if you were to draw things like you were saying, or write things about New Hampshire, or this one, they've been there, people hopefully will be able to get it right. So the sign for Rochester hopefully is, or whatever New Hampshire is, hopefully
you could tell it was like in the Hopkinton area. But it was really, really cool to have that. I mean, and then the Blue Book this week is set in New Hampshire.
Yes, you're right.
You're right, actually. I haven't read it yet, but
do you know who wrote Audible? It's Dino Kraus. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Dino Kraus, he's been on the podcast. No, he's
okay.
from like Indiana or Chicago.
What's he doing writing about our stuff?
I don't know. He's been on here, and there's some things I can't say about, but we're potentially working on something for this summer for his new book. That's
nice.
about all I can say out loud on a recording. You
I
might be able to hear
this.
a little thing when we press stop. So
do you remember these covers?
Yes.
So New Hampshire had Spider-Man for some reason on the Spider-Man's never been to New Hampshire. I would know.
Well, the funny thing about it, he's never been to anywhere there isn't tall things, because he can't it's like the trees are only so tall in New Hampshire. Maybe that's how the old man on the mountain fell. Spider-Man went like this and pulled it down. No, that's pretty awesome though.
So we did a Spider-Man variant, which is so good.
That's awesome. But yeah, so obviously check out Travis and everything he's doing. He's kicking butt and taking names and punk names. I'm excited to have these now. I took them out. I think I'm gonna put them on my shelf though. I think the bags and boards were great, but I think I need to have them so I can see them.
Keep your free bags and boards.
The little orange cone on the side of it.
Yeah, keep your bags and boards. It's smart.
So when these inevitably get optioned or something like that, are you going to force people to watch them on the VLC player on the computer? Because isn't that the VLC logo is an orange cone? Not that orange cone, but I'm just saying I think it's an orange cone. And it's like their like icon. So I feel like you have to play this.
I'm not aware of that.
But yeah,
maybe
go ahead.
For Orange Cone, the reason why we came up with that is my thought was, when you see an orange cone, you have to take notice. It could be bad. It could be an accident right here, or it could be they're building a new skyscraper or a amusement park. You don't know, and that's what I want my company. Just stop and take notice. Pay attention. If you like it, cool.
And in Rochester, if you see an orange cone, it's also more likely that there's a pothole right there too. It's New England, so just move around that and caution for that thing. And that's pretty funny on that. But yeah, so you got Coins of Judas available, Band of Bards, and then you got a Granite State Punk available in March at Scout, and you're going to be in New Hampshire a couple times. It sounds like the old school
and
comic
MegaCon.
show.
If people are coming out to
MegaCon.
MegaCon's a big con in Orlando, so I'll be there. Lots of exclusives for Granite State Punk will be there. Also, speaking of exclusives for Granite State Punk, I don't know if you know about, Scott, they do a VHS variant.
Yes.
So like you'll randomly get a variant. Granite State Punk, because of our sales, got a VHS variant. So make sure you're on the lookout trying to get that if you're hunting.
Yes, because I have a couple of those. I mean, we don't kill spiders is the one that I think I have right here somewhere. But yeah, and then obviously Substack, Travis Gibb .substack.com, and obviously that's where all your links to all your social stuff is on there as well. So check that out on there. And honestly, it's so funny because Travis Gibb, if you just type it in Google, there's all kinds of things that come up. But if you type Travis Gibb comic, then all the stuff comes up for you. So you can just do that too. That's the way we live in this world. We have to type in like someone's name and then comic book afterward. And like, okay,
well,
you're definitely going to get the people that write comic books that way, because people don't have their names connected to comic books unless they're actually in comic books.
Well, here's the thing. So my last name's Gibb. So famous Gibbs are the Bee Gees. Barry Gibb. Well, Barry Gibb has a son. He is 44 years old. I am 44 years old. His name is Travis Gibb. My name is Travis Gibb. We both live in Florida. We are not the same person, regardless of the messages I get all the time.
Well, I've never seen you guys in the same place at the same time, so I don't believe this.
And we both have this stupid thing. See this like cut in between our like that is a Gibb like family. Like my mother-in-law does the family tree. She's like, "You're not related to him." I was like, "Motherfucker, I am. Look at that.
Right. This is proof right here."
We both have this stupid thing.
That's amazing. So keep up the great work, dude. I mean, I'm very excited to see how this go. And I think, people can take some ideas too, if you ever want to start a Kickstarter, because Travis does a great job at running these Kickstarters out there. You've had 15, 18 of them so far that I've seen, and it's
been a little crazy.
More. and Kickstarter is a great way to do this. And honestly, there's some publishers like Boom, for example, have picked out different projects to kickstart as well, which is a great thing too for the comic book industry to get that back in the mindset of Kickstarters. You can get some really cool exclusive things that you can't get anywhere else, and it's a proven concept to the idea that like if you're going to say I want this special cover and you basically get a pre-order for it, you're not going to be like eating the money on making this thing, because now I have 100 people who want this exclusive cover. I can make 100 of them and be good with it. So Kickstarter is a great place to start these comic books. And
if you're a fan of covers too, I can't reprint any of the covers I do for Granite State Punk on Kickstarter will not be used by Scout. So like so if you want a cover from that, like you're gonna have to figure out a way to get it, from me directly.
Exactly. So, and check out, like I said, he's gonna be at cons and different things, but if you're in New England, check out the Old School show, because I'm excited for that one too. I'm gonna try to get down there for that. Look at that Scout comic shirt on there. How do you get one of those? You have to write a comic book for them, or?
Yeah, it's just they give it to me for free, which is nice. It was a nice thing. I went out to the store.
Is the back say I wrote a comic book for Scout and all I got was this lousy t-shirt?
Right. I also got one from Band of Bards and a lot for Marvel, so I assume that I must write for Marvel as well. Correct.
I don't know. I mean, I guess nowadays it's like All Hallows Eve. I guess you could have done something for Marvel with these things, but yeah, they're doing this now. But Jerome does a great job with the logos. These are amazing, unlike the new Marvel logos that have been coming out recently. I'm very upset with those, but very good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and joining us and chatting. Comic books, Granite State Punk, Coins of Judas, Kickstarter. Check them all out. Anything else you want? Oh, are you doing, I saw you recording something. Are you doing some sort of podcast or video thing now?
All right, so I don't do a podcast, but I do a podcast.
Okay.
I don't want to be a podcaster. That's not what I want to do. But I do two podcasts. One of them is every other Monday. I do Comics Book Level Up. So I'll take a writer or artist, and I will go over their catalog and tell them how much I love them. Basically, it's a love fest about how much I love the work that they do. We talk about it in great detail and kind of talk about leveling up as I'm trying to level up, and because this is my first year in the direct market. I've just been a Kickstarter creator for the last 4 years. So my 5th year, I'm really doing that. So we do that, and then I do a creator hangout, but that's really to sell like Kickstarters and stuff like that. And those are when I feel like it. It's not like a set time or whatever. But yeah, we have that. So Comic Book Level Up if you're interested in that and you want to learn more about that. But yeah,
that's awesome. I felt like when you run your own, like there's no parent person telling you who you have to have on your podcast. You realize that you only talk to people that you like. So like, there's never this
Right.
like person who's like, oh no, you have to have Travis Gibb on. He's got a book coming out, and I read the book, and I'm like, it's not that great. And then I have to talk to
Right.
that person. It's like, okay, at least like this is like, yes, I can understand why you're only gonna put people on your level up thing that you want to talk to. So obviously
Right.
the entire time is just gonna be like, oh, by the way, I'm just gonna like dote on you this entire time and tell you how much I love your work, because I wouldn't have you on right now if it wasn't the case.
Yeah, it's been so fun talking to people, and I think people appreciate it because
Yeah.
people, you know, even in this podcast, we're only talking about what's new, and there's nothing wrong with that. Especially, you know, you're a new reader, or new stuff, but it's really good to go to that back catalog, especially someone like a Pat Shand who's been doing this for like 20 years. Like, let's go in that back catalog and really talk about where it came from, because we're proud of the stuff that we've created, but we're always just talking about the new thing because that's the thing we got to sell. So what's great about that podcast, I'm not trying to sell anything. Like, my objective is not to sell their book. My objective is to sell their book is good. So this week, today, so at 9 p.m., I had this interview at 9 a.m. At 9 p.m., we have Doug Wagner. From Plush, for Image, you know, did plastic, did vinyl. We have him on tonight. We're going to talk about what's it like to be an image creator and what's all that going.
Plush is unique, people.
It is a unique book.
I picked it up on the shelf and I was like, oh, it's interesting. That's what I should say. Interesting. It's very interesting. You should read it because it's very interesting. But yeah, awesome. I really appreciate it. And, you know, go take a nap before tonight because you're going to need that rest up and, you know, save your vocals for that podcast because you need that to talk to Doug Wagner.
Nice. Well, I got a co-host though, so he can cover me. I like to just drink Guinness during it. And let him talk.
Thanks a lot, Travis.
Thank you.